Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring, and my slightly delayed unboxing and initial impressions of Aeronautica Imperialis. This is a game that, when Games Workshop announced it, I was immediately interested. I hadn't played the previous version of Aeronautica, so I can't really do any comparisons on a previous experience with this game, but instantly interested because who wouldn't be interested in having little baby Dakar jets to fly around the tabletop? So this was a game that immediately went onto my wants list. But as I read a little bit more about it and what was actually in the box, I did start to become slightly dubious of the value. So I did some extra research and found out a few things, and then some of my concerns were compounded when one of my subscribers, John, contacted me through Board Game Geek and basically reinforced my opinion that some of the value here is a little bit dubious. But we will talk about that in detail once we've unboxed this and had a proper look. But I will just say that my initial intention was to just buy the starter set and try the game system out. But based on what I discovered, I did also pick up these, the Aircraft and Aces cards for both factions. We will take a look at these cards in detail in another video, but I felt that they were an essential purchase to make your initial games of Aeronautica Imperialis a little bit more palatable. But anyway, let's open this box and have a look, shall we? First and foremost, I'm sure someone in the comments can give me the answer here, but I feel like I've seen this artwork before, and I feel like it was perhaps the artwork on the original Aeronautica book. If not this piece of artwork, then this is perhaps a homage to it. I feel like this craft and this framing is a reproduction, if not an exact copy, then a homage. So maybe somebody in the comments will be able to confirm that. But like I say, I do not have any previous experience with Aeronautica. It's one of the few Games Workshop products that I have never really played. But this is our two-player starter set, Wings of Vengeance. It's a game of aerial combat in the 41st millennium. At this point, all I have done is remove the shrink wrap. We are exploring this box together. It's an adventure for the whole family. Oh, bubble wrap. This is nice to see. Sometimes Games Workshop will do this. They will put bubble wrap and stuff in a box, and other times they won't, and they'll just let the miniatures skag the hell out of everything and get knocked about. But obviously concerned about the little aircraft, so bubble wrap, good to see. And it does look like there's also a card divider between the plastic and the paper components underneath to again keep them safe, to avoid the scratching, which is good. So this box set retails for £55, which is quite a lot for a starter set, because this is very much a starter set, and this is where my concerns were. This is a product that is very much like First Strike for Warhammer 40k, in that it's a taster, it's a bit of everything to explore the system and serve as a launching point for getting deeper into the game system or the hobby in general. It's not one of the lavish two-player big box releases. It's not like Warcry or Kill Team or anything like that. This is very much a stripped down starter set. So if you've seen the First Strike box set, the First Strike box set for Warhammer 40k basically came with 2 3-man units of Space Marines, a 3-man unit of Death Guards, and then a small unit of Poxwalkers. It came with the very slim core rulebook, not any of the advanced rules, but just the very basic rules. Stats for the units you got in the box, a little paper mat that was not a full-scale paper mat, and the box turned into a building. But it was very much, play through that starter set, learn the game, and then that serves as your beginning, your first step, and then you can figure out what you want to buy next, whether you wanted to buy a larger starter set or individual purchases. This box set is very much in that vein. So what do we get? We get dice. 8 dice. the little standard Games Workshop dice that you always get. We get some plastic miniatures and some bases. And I'm going to put all the plastic to one side for a moment. And flying stems. Hoorah! First of all, I'm going to put this box to one side. Because I wanted to show you one of these bases. I'm sure you've all seen these bases by now. Because like I say, I am behind the curve. My copy of Aeronautica didn't land on my doorstep at the weekend. I relied on a local store that then turned out not to be stocking the product. So then I had to order it online and wait for its arrival. So this is an Aeronautica base. It's pretty fancy. It's all molded and stuff, and it's got little clicky things here. We've got this side. This is your throttle, your speed, determining your current speed on the table, going up to 9. And this is your elevation, which goes up to 5. And I guess 0 means you've ploughed into the side of a mountain somewhere. So yeah, this is a little bit of nostalgia for me, really, because it's not the first time I've seen this sort of thing from a Games Workshop related product, because I used to collect the Sabertooth Games Lord of the Rings miniatures game, which was a blind packaged collectible product, and Sabertooth Games was a subsidiary of Games Workshop at the time, so it had familiar looking sculpts for their Lord of the Rings characters, and it had little spinny bases, and the bases in this case were for tracking hit points and special ability points that you could tick down as you used your special abilities. But yeah, so although these are obviously very different in terms of they're much bigger, and the rotating elements are in a different place and it's embossed, it did immediately bring to mind these old bases, which was a nice little nostalgia hit for me. So the miniatures, what do you get? Well, you get 4 types of craft, and you get them in the minimum quantities that they could get away with giving them in. So this is, let me have a look here, let me get this right. This would be the Imperial Marauder. It comes on 2 frames. This frame is obviously the main chassis of the craft. And then we have the weapon options and things like that. The little twiddles and diddles to make them look the way you want them to look. These craft are in a lot more bits than I was expecting, and they're a little bit larger than I was expecting as well. I was expecting these to be very quick assemblies, but they look like they have quite a lot going on. They're obviously not push fit. They are, glued assemblies with many options for what you're doing. Weird thing is, I believe that this same frame will make a different type of Imperial ship called a destroyer. I think it's exactly the same, that bit, and then it has a different secondary frame. So if you buy a box set of Marauders, you will get these 2 frames, and if you buy a box set of Destroyers, you will get this frame and then a different frame. And I'm not sure why they didn't just make it that you could make either or with the same kit, because I've eyeballed them both on the internet, and I reckon that across the tabletop, eyeballing these, Destroyers and Marauders aren't going to look that distinct. I mean, I may be wrong, I've not seen them in real life, but looking on the store, my immediate thought was it was the same ship with just slightly different accessories on it, and so yeah, I'm not sure why they've done that, but there we go. I guess you could almost just like proxy your Destroyers for Marauders or Vicky Verka. So I guess that's probably what I might do. But anyway, so there we go. That's the Marauder. You then get one frame of Imperial Thunderbolt flyers, and I believe in this case you can actually use the various options on them to turn them into Furies instead. So in this case there is an either or option, but you get two of those. If you buy these as a box set, as a separate purchase, you actually get 4. So they're giving you half of a box there. Again, it's sort of enough to experience the game, but not getting a full... They're not really units because you can field them in the quantities that you want to field them in. So it's not like this is a half unit. It's just, it's 2 rather than 4. But yeah, not a full box set's worth, because again, this is a starter set. So you get 4 Imperial craft total. We then get 2 of the fighter bombers, the Orky fighter bombers, which are very cool. I'm very surprised at the number of little bits and bobs and little bombs and things like that. I mean, they've obviously given you loads of options for customizing the appearance of them, but at this scale, and if a lot of this stuff is underslung beneath the craft, across the table, how important is all that? It's one of those things that, you know, it's nice to be able to sort of customize your craft and make them look exactly the way you want, but when it comes down to it, when it's down to brass tacks, is it really going to make that much of a difference on the tabletop? I think they're still going to look very similar. But we will see when I've assembled mine. But 2 of those, and again, if you were to purchase the box set of these, which is £25, you actually get 4 crafts, so you get this frame twice. Finally, you get a frame of 3 Dakka Jets, the little baby Dakka Jets that I immediately fell in love with a variety of different nose cones and things like that. So they will look a little bit different, a little bit special. Obviously, with Orky craft, they do have a tendency to look like they were just botched together with whichever scraps of things they could find. So having those options to make them look a little bit varied is quite useful. It's, I guess, also going to be a way that you can identify if you've got special craft with certain upgrades and things like that. You can say, okay, the one with the toothy nose cone has that upgrade or whatever. But yeah, 3 of those, and again, if you were to purchase these at retail, you get a box of 6 for £25, so it's half a box again. And this was sort of one of the initial things that struck me, is that you're getting half boxes of things, and is that still a value? So before we look any further, let's do the maths. Maths is fun. £25 would get you 6 of those, you get 3, so that's £12.50. Same again here, £12.50. Same again here, £12.50. And then here, this is actually a full box, because I guess if they've got 2 on a frame and you only get 2 in a box, they can't split the frame, so they had to give you the whole box. So that is actually a £25 purchase. I can actually get all of these box sets for £20 online, so a full set of each set of crafts would be £80. But let's do it at full retail price. So we're paying 25 quid and then £12.50 for each of those. That's a total purchase of £62.50. The retail price for the starter set is £55. I paid £44 online. So there is a saving there in just the miniatures alone. The main annoyance being you're getting half sets, and then if you bought a full box set of whichever craft you're interested in, are you then going to have too many of them? You know, for example, if you've got two of these Furies, Thunderbolt fighters, and then you bought another box set, you've got 6. But did you really only need 4? It's one of those things. I think in this case, because you can build them as Furies or fighters, it probably works out. But with Dakka Jets, where you get 6 in a box and you've already got 3, do you really need 9? I don't know yet. I don't know. But overall, yes, there is a very minor saving. I think if I'd have bought all of these products with an online discount, it would have cost £50, and I paid 44. So online, even with the online discounts applied, there's a little bit of a saving there. And obviously, you get all the other bits and bobs, which we're going to look at now. Here's the box with the bits and bobs. So this is just a protective thingy, and it shows painted versions of everything you get. So this is quite useful because I've just shown you the frames. So we have the Marauder bombers. Interesting that they actually include the fighter bombers and the Marauder bombers, because to the best of my knowledge, there's no ground forces or anything dealt with in this starter set. Ground emplacements like missile batteries, silos, all that sort of stuff is dealt with in the full rulebook, which is the Rin's World book, which I think is erroneously advertised as a campaign book, but is really the full rulebook. It's kind of like if you bought First Strike for 140k and then you get just the core rules. That's what you're getting here. That's what this rulebook is, just the core rules. And then if you want the full experience and every option that you can get for the game, you have to buy a hardback book separately, the full Warhammer 40k Dark Imperium rulebook. And in this case, that full purchase would be the Rin's World campaign book. So I'm not sure why. I mean, obviously it does have a campaign in it, and it's linked to that Rin's World campaign, but it's still the full rules that you aren't getting here. So I think maybe it should have been labelled as such. I don't know. Anyway, there's our Dakka jets, and you can see they've got the different nose cones to make them look different. They've also got like different tails and things like that. They look, whereas the Imperial fighters look very consistent in their appearance. Dakka jets and fighter bombers, not so much. But anyway, that's just that. We've got a pack with the rulebook and the instructions, the build instructions. We have a set of tokens. We have a quick reference sheet. One quick reference sheet. And a map. We're going to look at all this stuff a bit more detail. And a transfer sheet. Transfer sheets are cool. Yep, one transfer sheet that's doing both sides. So I guess that's a specially produced transfer sheet rather than including the transfer sheets that you would get with the individual box sets, because they're all combined together. Dakka jets, bombers, marauders, and thunderbolts. Still nice to include transfers, especially with something that's vehicles, painting insignias and things like that, and all that kind of stuff is difficult. And it's nice to see they've got like all the fire things and stuff like that, because that's very difficult sort of stuff to freehand unless you're an awesome painter, which I, ladies and gentlemen, am not. Alright, I'm going to put that to one side. And we're gonna talk about this. What you get, more importantly, what you don't get. We have the quick reference rules sheet, which has on the back the diagrams for the special maneuvers that you do. Or in fact, the maneuvers in general. Some of them aren't that special, but this is how you will move in the game, because the way this game works is that at the start of the turn, everybody applies a secret maneuver to their craft, and then you reveal them in alternating and actually take the maneuvers. So there's a little bit of like predicting what your opponent's going to do. Will they do this? Will they do that? Obviously something that is going to be familiar to people who have played other aerial combat games. But there is only one of these reference sheets. This is a 2-player starter set, Games Workshop. Come on, stick a second sheet in, you mugs. They could have easily put in a second sheet. This is an expensive starter set. I feel it should have had 2. Because this is actually one of those things that, if you're thinking about whether to buy the starter set or just to buy some individual box sets and the hardback rulebook, this is one of the things that you're not getting if you make the individual purchases. So this is something that is a value added element to purchasing the starter set. You get the reference sheet. without having to photocopy it out of a book or whatever. We then get the token sheet. This is a single board, and it does not have as many tokens as you would get if you were to purchase the tokens separately. You're basically getting enough tokens to play with the craft that come in the box. Because obviously they didn't want to include more than you needed. So the numbered tokens at the top are the ones that you secretly place down to say which particular maneuver you're going to make. And what have we got there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 ones. So that's going to be more than enough for what you're working with this starter set, with the number of craft you get in this starter set. But once you introduce additional craft, if everybody wants to do maneuver 1, then you don't have enough tokens anymore. So at that point, if you're going to play bigger games, if you're going to play beyond the starter set, you're probably going to need to buy more tokens, or make your own, I guess, is the alternative. Or just photocopy them and print them on your own card, or whatever you want to do. But not enough. It's enough tokens for the starter set, which I guess is what you would expect from a starter set. But additional purchases may be required, depending on how far into the game you're going to get, and also whether you're going to collect all the stuff yourself. This is one of the starter sets, more so than any other that Games Workshop has produced, that feels like one of those starter sets that you're kind of supposed to buy one and your mate buys one and you split the contents. Because if you both buy a set and then you go, okay, you can have all my orc pieces and I'll have all your imperial pieces, suddenly you've got the contents of all of the box sets, because you'd have 6 Dakar Jets, and you'd have 4 Furies, you'd have all that sort of thing. You'd have full box contents worth of the stuff. So it does feel a little bit like that might have been what they were thinking. That might have been where they were going with that, is like you buy one, someone else buys one, you split the miniatures, and then you've both got your own set of tokens and things like that, and therefore you do have roughly enough. I mean, these are damage tokens. You could potentially run out of damage tokens. They are double-sided. These abilities, once you get up into the 7s and 8s, there's only a few craft that can actually pull off 7 and 8 maneuvers, so that's why they've given you less of those. But yeah, it does feel like splitting sets might be an advantage in this particular case with this particular starter set. But again, like I say, for me, that's not something I'm going to do. I'm not going to buy 2 starter sets. Not what I'm into, just because of the way that I tend to collect things for myself. We then have the area of engagement. And the area of engagement is, ladies and gentlemen, a paper mat. If you have watched my channel with any kind of regularity, you have probably heard me whinging about paper mats. I don't like paper mats. I don't like them. I understand it's a starter set. I understand that paper mat is the best way to go. So yeah, I understand why they've done it, but it's not even like one of those slightly thicker paper mats. If you have been watching my Warhammer 40k Conquest magazine coverage, this is of inferior quality to the paper mats that come with that magazine. The artwork is nice enough, but and this is the big but, it's not a full scale area of engagement. I believe someone said this is a 30 by 30, and the standard area of engagement is 36 by 36, and I think they are actually going up to a larger size mat as well for bigger games. I guess at some point they will release a neoprene mat or something that will cover that. But obviously what they've done is they've given you a starter size battle mat, as they did with something like First Strike, where it's condensed down because you're playing smaller games with smaller forces. If you're just playing with the starter set, this is big enough. But as soon as you start adding additional craft, this battle mat becomes pretty much useless because you're going to be too cramped, you're going to be too up in each other's faces, up in each other's grills too much. And that's exactly what it was like with First Strike, is that the battle mat they gave you was just enough for having those 2 units on each side fighting against each other, but you would need something bigger. The difference, of course, with First Strike is that First Strike is a tabletop game, and you didn't really need a mat on the table at all. It was an aesthetic thing. You could place Warhammer 40k on a plain kitchen table and make the battlefield any size you want. Aeronautica is a hex-based game, so you do need something on the table that is hex-based, which basically means if you want to build your forces beyond the starter set, which of course you'll want to do if you enjoy the game, a purchase of a new battle mat is an essential purchase. It's not something you can avoid doing, and that's a little bit naughty. I mean, I feel that they should have included the full-size mat, and then if you want to upgrade to a proper card mat or even a neoprene mat if they release one, that should be your optional purchase if you don't like playing on a paper mat. If I like the game and I intend to expand it, I would go for a nice high quality mat anyway, because like I say, I don't like paper mats, but that should be my choice. It shouldn't be something that has been that I'm being strong-armed into doing to get the full-scale battlefield. But there we go. Finally, last things in the box, we have some paperwork. Obviously, we have the build instructions for the 4 types of miniatures. I'm assuming that these are exactly what you would get if you bought the box sets for the miniatures. So that's fair enough. And then, oh, I take it all back. I take it all back. Look, there is a second quick reference sheet. So, I take back my earlier rant. You do get 2. That's good. That's a good call. I should never have doubted you, Games Workshop. I expect a call from the Inquisition anytime now for my heretical thoughts. Finally, we have our rulebook, which is very nice. It's got this nice quality paper. That's a really nice production. It's a shame that it's a really nice production being spent on a book that you're eventually going to outgrow if you enjoy the game enough to expand, because you're going to want to get all the rules for campaigns and ground-based units and things like that. So, but yeah, this is the core rules. It has all your basic-y stuff, the explanations of the bases and all that sort of thing, and then it should have a little bit later on points for purchasing starter forces. Basically, let's skip on. It's very nicely produced. I love all the artwork. I love all the aerial combat stuff. It's very nice. There's a scenario thing here, talking about scenarios, but as I understand it, yes, you only get one scenario in this game. You get the dogfight, which is your basic 2 forces having a go at each other, and that is that. And that's okay. I don't really mind that. I understand it. Again, looking back at something like First Strike, you only got one scenario in that game. You got to play through some learning scenarios, which I guess don't really count because they're teaching you the game. And at the end of it, there was like the basic fight scenario, the 2 forces on the battlefield having a go at each other. And then if you wanted to play additional scenarios, you had to source them elsewhere, or you had to buy the full rulebook. And that's what they've done there. So I do understand that. They've gone for a starter set rulebook. It gives you the core rules, it gives you a basic scenario to play, and it gives you squadron lists and points for the units you get in the box. So, you know, here's your stats for the Thunderbolt fighter and things like that. And this is, I guess, one of my other major complaints about this, is that they've put the stats and points and things in the rulebook. They did not include any unit cards or anything And that's inconvenient when you're playing the game, especially when you're learning or you're introducing it to someone for the first time. You've got one rule book, all the stats for both forces are in the back of that rule book. You're going to be constantly handing the book backwards and forwards, and it wouldn't have killed them in this starter set to have included just the unit cards for the units you're getting. This is why, when I was doing my research and deciding whether, what kind of value was in this box set, I decided that I wanted to buy these 2 card sets. And like I say, we will look at those another time. But these card sets have all of the unit cards and all of the upgrades and everything else that you will need in them. It would have been nice to have had just the cards that you needed for the starter set in the box. Again, I kind of understand to a certain degree why they're not there, because if you include the cards for the starter set and then someone wants to expand, then they're going to need to buy the card packs anyway, and if they're buying the card packs anyway, they're going to end up paying for things that they already got in the base game again. And so what's the point? You've created extra cardboard that you didn't really need. But on the other hand, a starter set is supposed to introduce you to the game in the most convenient, simple way possible. And First Strike had unit cards in the box so that you could just put them on the table and you could play and you had all the information in front of you. And that is how a starter set should be presented. You should have everything as convenient as possible so that you can focus on learning the game, learning to love the game, so that you can then expand onwards. Your starter set should open the door. It shouldn't immediately go, well, if you want to do this, we've made it a little bit more inconvenient, but we've got a card pack over here you can buy that will make it more convenient. Again, that feels a little bit like it's coercing people to immediately make additional purchases that they may not, that they may regret afterwards. But yeah, a starter set, it should be a simple entry point that has everything you need to learn the game and enjoy the game. So definitely I would have liked to have seen some unit cards and things like that. But anyway, that is that. That's the entirety of the starter set. And like I say, it does feel very much like a starter set. It feels very much like the First Strike set in that you're getting a streamlined version of the game. You're getting enough miniatures to play, a battlefield that's just big enough to play on, and you're getting the core rules with none of the frills, none of the campaign, none of the additional rules, none of the extra unit types, nothing at all beyond what is in that starter set experience. You are getting an entry point. The big difference, of course, is the price. Whereas the First Strike starter set, which I rate very highly as an entry point to 40k, while that set was £25, this set is £55, and I understand that that price incorporates a lot of development in terms of the rule set, but also the bases, the design of the new types of bases with the twirligigs, and obviously an entire product range of new scale aircraft, which they didn't have before. So I understand that there's a lot of development costs have gone into that price. But for a starter set, £55 is pushing the top end of what I think is reasonable, especially when it really is a starter set. It is one of those sets where as soon as you want to expand your game in any way, you're making a lot of purchases and making a lot of the stuff from this set redundant. If you want to play a full-scale battle, you need to replace this battle map. If you want to play with missile launchers and ground units and silos and things like that, you have to buy the Rin's World campaign book. If you want to play campaigns, you have to buy the Rin's World campaign book. If you want to have the convenience of having your units in front of you with their upgrades on them and their special fighter pilots on them, you have to buy those card packs. If you want larger forces, you probably have to buy another token sheet. It's at this point, it should be a lower cost of entry, I think. I think £55 is pushing it. And I'm not saying it's not value in terms of buying the things individually, because as we said earlier, you are getting miniatures that exceed the value you're paying for the starter set. And of course, you're getting 2 of those reference sheets, which I think is an important thing to have. and you are getting everything you need to start playing straight away without having to make a massive investment. So you do have that opportunity to decide whether you enjoy the game and decide whether you want to expand the game. But I've already had to expand the game by buying the 2 card packs, because I knew that my first games would be very inconvenient if I had to keep flipping through the book or making notes on a piece of paper and things like that. And having those cards will make my first games more enjoyable, and they're more likely to lock me into the system. They're more likely to make me go, well, actually, I enjoy this system and it's very well put together and I enjoy it enough to purchase more. But I shouldn't have had to have made that purchase straight away. So, yeah. I mean, there is value in the set. If you're worried, like, is it better to buy things individually? If you want to buy things individually, you have to buy full sets of the craft. So you're doubling up the cost of everything there. It's like each pack of craft, even with an online discount, is £20. So if you want to try the game with all 4 types of craft, that's £80 straight off the bat just to have all the different types of craft to experiment with. And they are releasing more craft within the matter of weeks. So, you know, if you do it that way, if you don't go the starter set way, you'll probably end up maybe only buying 1 or 2 types of craft. So you might not get to fully explore what the game offers in that sense. So I do still see the starter set as a worthwhile purchase to get you into the system. And like I say, having those reference cards and things is useful. Having a simplified core set rules so that you can learn the basics without having to immediately start thinking about ground units and other types of craft is a good thing. I do question why they've included bombers when there's no bombing involved in this starter set, but there you go. Those were the craft that they started the system with, so those are the ones that are in the box. And I guess that's it, really. I think this is a starter set that does lend itself well to purchasing 2 and splitting them with a friend. I think that way you're getting much more complete forces to immediately expand your game with. But of course, even then, you're then going to have to, one of you is going to have to go and buy a bigger map. My 2 biggest grievances are the map being not a full-size map and the lack of some cards for the units you get in the box. If those 2 things had been different, I would be much happier with this as a starter set product. I think the price is high, but like I say, it is covering the costs of those things you get. It's a very small discount over buying everything individually, and it's a more convenient way to get everything in one place. But there we go. That's my initial thoughts. I am keen to get my planes built, and I'm keen to start playing. We will do another video where we will look at the cards, and we will go from there, and I will give some more opinions on what I think of the gameplay as and when I delve into it. Thank you very much for watching. If you're still watching at this point, I realise this has been quite a long video, but hopefully it has been interesting to people who are not sure whether to buy the starter set or whether to buy individual products or whether to skip entirely. Hopefully this has shed some light. Thank you very much as always, and I will hopefully see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.